Once upon a time, in a room full of wonders, where every step leads to magic, and the journey of a true story begins here, with amazing guests and true miracles. Please like and subscribe for more amazing videos.
As a child, I had like out-of-body experiences, but how do you explain that to a LaRue County, Kentucky farm mom? And even before I had the words, before I could even speak, I was having out-of-body experiences. And as a child, you just think that everybody else can do this. So I remember one instance, my mom and dad, they loved to play a card game called Rummy. And so they would invite their, friends over, and they would be playing on the table and looking around and everything. And I remember so vividly, like pulling on my mom's dress as I was standing beside her. I was trying to get her attention. I couldn't get her attention, but she was having a blast. She was laughing. But I'm going to say 16 to 18 months old, I wanted her attention. So she was not paying attention to me. And all the other older children were doing what they do. They were in the other room playing, running. Well, I couldn't run yet like that. So I decided to see what was on top of the table. So my consciousness floated above, and I saw what they were laughing about and having such a good time. It was the Rummy game. So I floated back down in my body, and then it's like everything's okay. So that's the earliest memory that I can recall to speak out loud, other than my birth. My birth was something that I feel like that we could probably cover in another video, but that was amazing in itself. So fast forward to 3 years old, I was standing out in the yard, and my dad had just cut down a big tree that lightning had just struck it. And I'm standing beside the tree, and all of a sudden I have this longing, this deep longing for home. Still not knowing how to say I miss going home. But all of a sudden I was in clouds, what looked like clouds. And I was just, that feeling of, I can breathe again. And I'm looking around, and all of a sudden my mother's not there. So this scary thing comes in me, like, where's mama? Where's my mama? And so all of a sudden I come back almost down in my body, but I see the back of my curly hair running into the house to find my mom. And I wasn't yet fully back in my body. But as I stepped into the house, I felt like a shakiness start all over again. And I think that's what most of my childhood was shakiness. Just this inner electrical buzzing that I had all the time. And I could sense other people's energies, if they were good people or bad people in my little life. And so I pulled away from those people that weren't highly conscious yet, I'll put it that way. And then the ones that I resonated with that just felt so, I was at peace again. So that went on. And then when I was 7 years old, I was getting so homesick that I remember sitting out in our yard underneath my favorite peach tree in the orchard. And all of a sudden, I lifted out again. And I was so distraught with this world, with this life. This wasn't the life I was supposed to be living. No one ever told me that. I didn't read that anywhere. As a matter of fact, I hadn't even started school yet. So it wasn't like I got peer influence. And all of a sudden, I'm back in my physical body, and I'm looking around at our farm, and I just got so angry. I was so furious. I said, this is not my home. And I just started bawling. I said, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I just kept on until I sobbed. Who can you say at that point? You can't tell your sisters or brothers. You can't tell your mom or dad. So you just kind of zip it up and keep it to yourself. And then so I'm back in this body, this shaky body, this trembling body. Little did I know, and oddly enough, that when I actually realized what it was that my electrical system was still probably buzzed from the near-death experience I had before I was born. So that made my nervous system really out of balance, out of whack. And my antennas were like out. So anything that was overstimulating for me was so much that, but you can't explain that when you're that age. You just can't say, I just can't take this anymore. And it's like, take what? The atmosphere and the environment that I was in. And as we all choose to come in, that's exactly what I needed to have at that time. Going to school was beautiful and horrific because I was around so many different people. And even the teachers, I could feel their energy, and the children and all that. So as time progressed, I got married against my heart, and stayed in that relationship for many, many years. Too many years. I had 4 children, and then we went through the whole deal of being in church every time the doors were open, to youth ministry, to deacons, to you name it, we were there. But it wasn't what I was feeling inside. And I tried so hard to be part of something that wasn't really my life purpose. So we finally divorced, and actually I did have another child, and then something happened as I grew 2 businesses from scratch. A construction business and a licensed massage therapy business, which that was so cool that God, Creator, led me into the massage field to help people, but also to learn that the anatomy and physiology of the body for my later purpose. But you don't know sometimes what you're going through is going to get you to that next thing that you're supposed to be doing in life or at that particular time. So I had my massage therapy business. I had a construction business doing quite well. But inside of me was so hurt and so longing. And I realized one day that the anger that had carried all those years, it was from not being able to go home. And that really upset me. Really upset me. But once I realized it, I was able to live more peacefully. But anyway, fast forward in 2000, I was 8 months away from a bodybuilding contest. I owned 2 businesses. AFA certified personal trainer, strongest I'd ever been in my life, but something in my heart was not right. And I did a plea to God. I did a plea. I said, I don't care what you have to do. Just do it. I want peace. Well, don't ever pray that prayer unless I didn't know the consequences of it. I didn't know to the depth that it would take me. So in 2000 October, I went to a hypnosis school thinking that, because, let me backtrack, my physical body started breaking down. Doing massage therapy, lifting 30-pound hopper concrete, weights of concrete in the construction. So my body started breaking down. And I thought, well, if I go to a hypnosis training, then I can help smoking cessation, I can help weight loss, I can just help a lot of people not having to do laborious work. So I did. I went to the training, but something went very wrong. But the day before I went to the training, my heart started to feel like, I can't really describe it. It was like a fear, but something I'd never felt before. Like an encompassing fear or doomsday feeling. The next day I woke up and I thought, I shouldn't go to this hypnosis school workshop today. And I was just really deliberating if I should go or not. So I was lying there in bed, and all of a sudden I heard this go. I mean, it was like audible. And it startled me. I jumped up, I ran, I got ready, and I went. That day changed my entire life. I had been dating, I was divorced, and I had been dating a racing official. And I'd never come across this energy before. But my energy was so low, and we attract what we resonate with. So when I was in this hypnosis class, I had spoken to the teacher before, and I said, I'm dating this racing official that physically put his hands on me. And he said, well, the next session we will have something that will help you. I said, okay, great. So the first guy gets up. We have our workshop. The first guy gets up. Tall, lanky business guy, very successful. And so the teacher sets it up. This is what we're going to do, and you can get away from somebody really quickly. So I'm like, oh, that's spot on, right? So I'm listening, and I'm right there. So he takes the guy, and he puts one hand on his left side and one hand on his shoulder, and he says, sleep. The guy falls over, and about 3 seconds, he gets up, and he's laughing. He's like, oh my gosh, that really works. So guess who had to be next? And so I jumped up and I went there, and he put one hand on my left side and one hand on my left shoulder, and he said, sleep. Well, when he said sleep, when I came to myself, I felt myself falling physically. And so when I came to myself, I was on my feet, squatted, but everything turned black, like the blackest black you can ever imagine. And this fire went poof in front of me. And then it felt like all of my abdomen, I know it's strange, can't hardly explain it, was literally sucked out of my body, scrambled, and then back. It looked like a movie scene. And then when I come to myself back in my body, I'm pushing him away and saying, stop, don't, crying so hard I can barely breathe. So he helps me up, and I'm shaking, and he gets me to my seat. And I thought, there's something very wrong here. I get sicker and sicker and sicker. I'm going in and out of consciousness. I'm having to stay in the bed a lot. When I work out, I'm I have all over body pain. My vision starts to leave. I get so sensitive. I can't stand to be around people. If you touched me, it felt like I was burning up inside. I didn't know anything about spirituality really then. I mean, I did know a little, but not what I was going to learn. So that's went on for about 6 months. And I would go in and out of consciousness. I would see beings. All different kind of experiences. I would be taken places, just really wild. And I couldn't tell anybody anything like that because what would they think? You know, you're crazy. You're losing it. So by the March of the next year, 6 months, I took my son to school. I don't remember how I got there, how I got back home. But I was lying in the bed, and all of a sudden, I was in this place. And it was dark, very, very dark. And I think I was sitting. I didn't feel anything like sitting on a chair, but I felt like I was sitting. And everything was dark, and no body pain. It's like, so I'm just sitting there waiting, and I'm like, okay, how long do I wait? I mean, I'm fully conscious at this point, more conscious than I'd been for months. So I'm sitting there waiting and looking around. Nothing. I saw nothing. And then all of a sudden, up to my right, I saw this little tiny spark. And I thought, what in the world is that? But it was the only thing that I could see. So as that spark got bigger and bigger and bigger, my hand started raising to it. And as it got about the size of a small orange or like a tennis ball, I knew what it was. It was home. And I was pushing so hard that I saw my hand and I was shaking. I was pushing so hard to open my hand to that light. Because I knew if I did, I would be home again. But all of a sudden, my hand was starting to come back to my body. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm like panicking, crying, panicking. And all of a sudden this being comes around and it doesn't look like anything here on earth. It's like a smoke, a cloud, and what comes off the radiator. If you put all that together, that's what it looked like. And out from that spoke telepathically, Peggy, it's not your time yet. Regretfully. I just couldn't believe it. It's like, it felt like all those, the times before in my life that I was almost there. They sent me back. Oh. When I came back in my body, I was at the head. And I could see my body just lying there on the bed. And my body came in. And as the blood started to beat in my body again, it felt like literally needles and nails going through my veins. I can't tell you how long I was out. It didn't seem like a minute, but when my blood started beating again, it was the most horrific pain I've ever had in my life. And that pain stayed with me for over 20 years in my feet, in my legs, in my hands. The rest of the body pain is all but gone. But that's been 25 years ago. And now I have perfect vision. That time I became legally blind. I was crippled. Couldn't drive. Someone had to move in to take care of me, literally. Going back from a bodybuilder, owning 2 businesses, to basically an invalid. Pretty humbling. Pretty humbling. And so through all of that, beings started appearing. I started hearing people's thoughts. I started seeing dead people floating in water. I just saw everything you can imagine, from bus crashes to people on the other side of the river, I'll call it. Just the whole thing, the heavens opened up in my head. And sometimes I would be walking down a street and I would hear, "Go in there, she needs you." And in the beginning, it would be like, what the heck? It just seemed like, what's going on? And there wasn't anybody I could talk to, because if you did, they were either like one of my teachers said, it depends on who you talk to, if you're a psychic or you're a psycho. So she said, be very careful to whom you give your information to. So, I would see all these ailments in people, and I would say, you need this, you have a neck injury, everything, did you lose a baby? The baby was still with the lady. She kept that baby for 47 years. So those are the things that's been happening over the top every day of my life. And the visions that I've had, that I've carried with inside of me, I'm now able to tell about them. I'm able to talk freely. Because just a few years ago, it would be like, if you'd say anything, you were either a psychic or a psycho. And I didn't like either one of those labels anymore. I just don't like labels anymore. We're all here to love. We're all here to expand. We're all here to grow. And sometimes people from, all over the world, they will call or text or email, or like, I don't know how I found you, but this is where it led me to see you. And so I was told from that time I had the near-death experience. Well, it's still going on. But I heard, this was in August of 2001, I heard, "You are healed." Since then, I was crippled. I mean, I could barely walk, couldn't wear shoes for like 4 years. I wore them, but it hurt so incredibly bad. So I mostly went barefooted or flip-flops. Anything I could do to stay inside the house. I heard, "You are healed." I sat up in bed. I jumped out of the bed and I almost fell. My feet, I was still crippled. And I said, "What did you say?" And I heard it distinctly again, "You are healed." And I said, "If you say I'm healed, I'm healed." Post-it note, stuck it on the mirror, 1:52 a.m., I'm good to go. Every day, I said, I am healed. And I think that's one of the things now that I tell people. What you want, that's what you dwell on. Even though you may have pain, you may have suffering, you dwell on what you want, what you desire. Yes, you may have a full body of pain, whatever it is, a mind full of pain, and acknowledge that, but don't dwell on it. Dwell on what you want, because that will come to be in your life. That's just the way our bodies were formed and made in the light. So I've had many experiences. And so I have to tell you a story, if that's okay. I was at my first book signing, and I really didn't know what to expect. And I had people sign up, and so the gentleman that signed up, his wife, actually his wife came second, but he wanted to come and just sit down because he had seen people coming in front of me, and I was telling him things, but he's like, let's just prove her wrong and then I'll be out of here. So he started, what I do with a person when they sit in front of me, I just start reading their energy, start reading their physical bodies, the imbalances, all of that. It shows up. And so I started telling him about some PTSD he had. He was in the military, a lot of different things. And then all of a sudden I said, did you have a loved one to pass? He's like, yes. And he started crying. And she came to me, blonde hair, long blonde hair, full of life. She's like, where's the quilt? And he's like, and he looked at me like, how do you know about the quilt? I said, this person's asking me where's the quilt, and she's adamant. He's like, well, I've got it upstairs. It's wrapped up. It's wrapped up stairs. I'm protecting it. I said, well, she's like, where is it? Why is it wrapped up in something? Why is something wrapped up inside of that? And he's like, well, I've got, it's special. I don't want to use it. And she was just like hammering away. And he's crying because he knows it's her. His younger sister got killed in a car wreck. And I said, did this person have like an impact? I said, because my front of my head is like, he said, yeah, she was catapulted into the creek next to them and she had a head injury. And I said, and he was just, he was this huge guy. And I put my arms around him and I just held him. And I said, it's okay. It's really okay. She's here. She's letting you know that it's all okay. She's okay. And lo and behold, she came through and she's like throwing her hand out like that. It's like, get over it. And I'm like, do I tell him that? Because he is in the middle of like boo-hooing, crying, his heart's broken and excited at the same time. And she's like, get over it, and laughing. And I told him, I said, I don't mean to sound light about this or anything. I said, but this is what she's showing me. She's putting her hand out like that and saying, get over it. And he started crying again. He said, that's exactly what she did. And so that reading went on, and I said, is there anything else that I need to tell? His name was John. She said, yes. Tell him to remember the gravel. Well, every time I would tell a message or something to this person, bawling. By that time, the whole bookstore is right there. And he said, that's what I would always do. I would lie in bed and wait to hear the gravel that she got home. She had just gotten her license. And that's, I guess, how she overcorrected on the road. So that day he left, and he and his wife both, and he said, Peg, I really tried to prove you wrong. He said, you're the real deal. He said, I've been carrying that pain for 20 years, and you just released that out of my body. So those are the things, those are experiences, and it just thrills me to see the sparkle. That's what I watch for, because that sparkle will come back. It's been so dimmed down and so hidden through pain and suffering. But when I see the sparkle, I'm good with it. So yes, I've had so many people that have gotten their sparkle back. And I could go on all day long and tell you story after story after story. But so what I've decided to do is write books and to let people know that their experiences, their passerbys or their thinkaways, they're real. If you see your grandmother a couple of days after she's passed, or you hear the same song that she's been singing to you, or a passed over loved one, those are real. those are real. So I want to let people know that what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is real. And don't pass it up. Don't pass it by, because it's a blessing. It's actually a message for you to know that those folks are okay. And maybe there's a message that's going to come in to help somebody else. So that was another reason that I started writing the books, is because someone said, you have a purpose, you have a blessing, and it's not right to keep it to yourself. And so that's why I started writing the books. Now, this is my first book. And I want the books to be short, and I want the books to be easy to read, and something simple that you can just take with you in a backpack and go to the coffee shop and read it in the afternoon. And the last chapter in the books, that's what I want the title to be. So The Shadow in the Corner is about a little girl in India. When I was there, she had a thought form in her corner. And she called me Mama. And she said, Mama, he's not nice. And I was infuriated. I got every goosebump on my body, stood up, and I'm like, not after today. So those are the stories that I want people to know that, and since the energy is opening up so beautifully now, that I want people to know we never die. They're still here. They're still here. And we can contact them so easily. But because of our belief systems, they literally cloud the heart. And, the heart chakra is so beautifully green, and then deep down is like magenta and then red. But when I see people that have clouded their heart, it hurts me. It actually hurts my physical body. I'm like, whoa. If you just knew that they're with you right now. And they can be with you. They can be with you. So just, know that. The second book is already out. It's called The Ring Within the Ring. And I said that kind of sounds like Harry Potter books, The Shadow in the Corner and The Ring Within the Ring. But it's not. It's that's the last story of my second book, about my aunt losing her rings and my uncle coming to me as I was stirring a pot of soup, saying, tell Aunt Des to remember the rings. And then I see this ring within a ring. And, I'm seeing so many things at that time. I have nothing to differentiate it with. I have nothing to compare it with. I was raised, you don't see things like that because it's wrong. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's our life being fulfilled. It's our life being fulfilled. My husband, then we used to fly across the United States. He was CFO of companies and all that. But we were in this one place. I was still very ill at the time. I didn't know that my Kundalini had burst open. And that's what was wrong with me. I didn't know what Kundalini was. I didn't know that all the chakras, I didn't know anything about that. And I was still sick at the time. So we traveled everywhere trying to get me help. Hello. Medical doctors can't do it. So we were in this hotel, and so we were walking to breakfast. And this homeless guy comes. Well, there's something inside of me for homeless people and cold people. There's something about that. So he's walking toward us. And so my husband's like, let's go. So I can't hardly walk very fast, And so he's coming at us at a pretty good little pace. And so we just stop. And he's like, can you give me some money? Like, I want them, what I'm saying? Like, adamant. And I didn't have anything with me. And I told my husband, I said, would you give me some money? And so he gave me, I don't know, I think $5 or something. And so I started to give it to the man, and my hand came back, And he looked at me. I love this. He looked at me and I looked at him and I looked at my husband and I'm like, I'm holding the money. And I gave it back to my husband at the time. And I said, do you want to be healed? He said, yes. So I put one hand on I grabbed one hand with his hand and put one hand on his shoulder. And I just started praying for him, speaking in different languages. And I just started praying for him. And then all of a sudden, this wave come up all the way to my shoulder. And it scared me. So I'm like, and it shook me. So I dropped my hands and I said, the message to give to him was, it won't be instant, but it'll take 3 to 4 months for you to complete the healing. He said, oh, thank you. And he said, yes, I do have HIV. And so then I gave him the money and he went off like he was he was a confused, disoriented, homeless guy that didn't know what happened to him in that moment. So as soon as we get in the restaurant, my husband's like, go wash your hands. Go clean that off of you. Because he had not seen anybody do any of the stuff that I was doing. So it was a real eye-opener for him. Like we were living in this, I don't know world. What's going to happen next world? So you don't know how things are going to come to you. But when you're listening, and I could have pushed through that and gave him that money, but it wasn't for me to give it then. It really wasn't for me to give him any money at all. It was the interaction. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused, because they think sometimes that just a simple interaction is nothing, and it's major. So listening, to your point, is listening inside of us to do that, which may be against our own liking. Do it. Just do it. Yeah. What I do, I'm a licensed massage therapist, and I used to teach at university, anatomy, physiology, myology, and that's how I got my construct for doing this work. I did not know that what steps to take next, so I would pray, what's my next step? Daniela, I have been catapulted, levitated from my chair over to my desk and typing in words like, what's that? I've been given so many next steps, and the next step that I had as far as my work, I tell people, they're like, well, what do you do? I said, well, I was told that I'm a hedronics healer. Danielle, I've never heard that before. This was 25 years ago, okay? I looked up, I Googled, I did everything. There was no hedronic healer anywhere. And it took me several years actually to keep asking what it was. It was so much. I was seeing boards, whiteboards as far as you could see, with all these equations and all these mathematical things. I would see on my wall at nighttime, total dark, but I would see these equations and how all these things just fit together. And trust me, I was good in math. They said, well, you're the smartest kid in school. I love school. But I said, do you have the wrong girl? I'm a LaRue County farm girl. Do you have the wrong girl for this? And they said no. And I didn't know what I was asking then. It was like waking up one day and you can see all this stuff and hear all this stuff. It's like, what the hell? I mean, literally, I didn't know what was going on. And I would just laugh. Sometimes I would go out and I would be driving and I would not know how to get home. It would totally leave me. And so I would get back home and that happened again. So I would just laugh till I would get back home. That happened over a series of years. But when I was teaching massage therapy and teaching all the anatomy, all the physiology, so I'm like, what's the next step? So I'm led to go to a bookstore. I'm walking, and a book literally falls off in front of me. And I'm like, that didn't just happen. It fell off in the floor, because I've heard of people saying that before, and it's like, nah, that didn't happen. It literally did. I picked the book up, and it was by Carolyn Mace. Do you know who she is? She's a medical medium. I had no idea who she was. She started doing this. That's how she became famous. She got with Dr. Norman Shealy. She didn't know anything about the physical body. And she started seeing inside of people. Well, she didn't know what maybe a gallbladder was, or, aortas. And so she got with a doctor and started learning the anatomy and physiology. So when I picked that up, it's like, is that what I am? I had no idea. Am I a medical medium? Medical intuitive? So I went through that whole route, and dead people would appear in my room at the foot of my bed, and the whole silhouette thing. And I would tell my children, your cousin just visited me last night. Her body is full of cancer. The endocrine system is full. You need to go see her. Within 6 days, she passed. So, I worked for the police for a little bit, finding missing people, and so it's such a bizarrely resplendent, beautiful life that I have walked into and fully encompassed now. But I was so afraid before. So what I do, I just see, I tell people, I see what I see, and that's what I tell you. Now, you might not think that's something at that moment. I said, but I guarantee you, if I see it, I'm just going to tell you. Because I used to would hold that away from people. If I would see something like this lady came in, and she had, when I looked at her, all the way down to the bottom of her feet, her toes, right across both of her toes, were just look like black and blue. And I said, what's going on with your toes? And she looked at me very matter-of-factly and said, nothing is wrong with my feet. I said, okay. So we get up, and I asked her to walk down the hall with me, and I had a brick and mortar office then. I said, come down, I want to show you this set of energy chakra systems that I want you to look at, because I want to see what color I saw when I looked at you. As soon as we go out of the room, she stops. And I'm walking, and I look back, and she looked at me. Her eyes are this big. She's like, yesterday I had cramps in both of my feet and my toes. And so that made a believer, so to speak, that I'm not just making stuff up, that I'm seeing inside of her. So those little things matter. So always say what you see, no matter if it seems odd, weird, curious, unbelievable, because that's going to show itself later. Some way, somehow, it's going to show itself. And I had a picture. I don't know where it is right now. But on my another book signing, a guy came in from California, and he was telling us that his mother just passed. And he just was led to come in there. He said, and that was her grand opening of the bookstore. So he comes from California and this bookstore, and I happened to be doing a book signing. Actually, it was just this first book. And so he walks around, and he's like, Peg, do you do readings? And I don't like the word readings, but I don't know what else to call it. You know what I'm saying? Messages. What? I don't know. I don't like labels, but that's what we have to use, our English language, or what language we are in. So he comes and he sits down, and before I sat down, I see in big, huge letters, Edna, Edna, Edna. I'm like, I said, Adam, who is Edna? He's like, I don't know, Peg. I have no idea. My mother's name's Dorothy. She just passed. I said, no, you will get the answer in a couple of days or whenever. I said, so you just text me back. So we went through the whole reading and all that, and he did some business things and just several things in the body, very good shape of us physically, and happy person, just beautiful heart. And so lo and behold, a couple of days later, I think that was Saturday, so on Monday, I think, he sent me this picture. He was going through his mom's estate that afternoon. He found her favorite recipe in the World Book, but he never knew what the name of it was. Edna recipe book. So, they come in all different ways, and they show us, there's no way I could have known that his mother had a recipe book named Edna. I mean, he didn't even know. So they come in and they show us things, and they give us clues, and they love on us, and they support us, and they're our cheerleaders, and they want so much for us to do good. And they're helpers. They're helpers to us where we are.